Amen. Well, we are so many. It's very interesting that as we had anticipated, as ladies anticipated talking about loneliness and depression, that we come to Psalm 88. Because it's all about depression. Psalm 88. We are walking through the Psalm. Psalm 88. All right, Psalm 88. Subscript says, a song of the sons of Korah for the choir director, according to Mahalath Leinoth, and Maskil of Herman the Ezraite. O Lord, the God of my salvation, I have cried out by day and in night before you. Let my prayer come before you. Incline your ear to my cry, for my soul has had enough troubles, and my life has drawn near to Sheol. I am reckoned among those who go down to the pit. I become like a man without strength, forsaken among the dead. Like the slain who lie in the grave, whom you remember no more, and they are cut off from your hand. You have put me in the lowest pit, in dark places, in the depths. Your wrath has rested upon me, and you have afflicted me with all your ways. Salah. You have removed my acquaintances far from me. You have made me an object of loathing to them. I am shut up and cannot go out. My eye has wasted away because of affliction. I've called upon you every day. O Lord, I've spread out my hands to you. Will you perform wonders for the dead? Will the departed spirits rise and praise you? Will your loving kindness be declared in the grave? Your faithfulness in Abaddon? Will your wonders be made known in the darkness, and your righteousness in the land of forgetfulness? But I, O Lord, have cried out to you for help. And in the morning, my prayer comes before you. O Lord, why do you reject my soul? Why do you hide your face from me? I was afflicted and about to die from my youth on. I suffer your terrors. I am overcome. Your burning anger has passed over me. Your terrors have destroyed me. They have surrounded me like the water all day long. They have encompassed me altogether. You have removed lover and friend far from me. My acquaintance, my friend, is the darkness. That's how the song ends. That's it. And so, a very interesting song, but I want to talk about, I don't know if I changed it. Okay, I don't know how that. Practical things learned from the pain of depression. Practical things that the godly learn from the pain of depression. Practical things that the godly learn from the pain of depression. So I want to argue that if we look deep enough at the pain of this psalmist, you can sense his pain. There's almost like this escalation. We can see some lessons that we can learn that can help us manage depression. I think we've all gotten over the religious tropes, as you were, these religious perspectives and patterns that says that I'm too blessed to be stressed. I remember when they was coming out back in the 90s, they had all those little sayings, and you'd walk around. I had a t-shirt, I'm too blessed to be stressed. And then I started living on what it was. Right? So I think we've all gotten over those type of kind of religious rhetoric that doesn't acknowledge the fact that Christians, that believers who know God and love him can and will find themselves battling depression. And if we look deep enough into the psalmist's pain, I think we learn some things. I want to suggest that since pain is often a great teacher, God can and sometimes will use immense emotional distress, even past what we can bear, to guide us towards some very practical things that should accompany our prayers. This last point is particularly important because at the center of the psalmist's depression is the fact that he has prayed about his problem. It's the fact that he has talked to the Lord about it. You always got those folks, well, just pray about it. Right? And his response is, I have prayed. That my depression is not a result of negligence, of spiritual negligence on my part. I've been going to the Lord. I've been talking to him. I've been crying to him. I've cried myself to sleep. I've prayed day in and day out, but he's not answering me. My depression is not because I haven't prayed about it. My depression happens in some ways because I have prayed about it and nothing has changed. It's in this verse, in verse 2, that we see, I think, at the crux of this problem. He says, I'm praying, but verse 2, he says, let my prayer come before thee. Incline thy ear. In this verse, he poetically speaks about his prayers as not making its destination. Not because of his sin, not because of some moral deficiency, but to use a contemporary analogy, the psalmist says, it's not that I'm not calling on you, it's just that you are screening my phone calls. He says, let my prayer come before you. Y'all know what it means to screen phone calls, right? Now, that was one of the biggest benefits of the invention of caller ID. Thank God for caller ID. Right? Because with the invention of caller ID, you can decide before you pick up if you want to talk to that person. Right? And so if you don't want to talk to them, you don't pick up, you just send the voicemail. But this is what the psalmist is saying when he says, let my prayers come before you. It's not that I'm not praying, but you have this screening session where you're not allowing my prayers to come into your presence. You've been screening my phone calls. Very interesting in light of the analogy. Remember, before caller ID, and we made prayer the analogy of a phone call. We talk about the line is never too busy. Call and call. The line is never too busy. Remember we ever seen that? Yeah. Right? The line is never too busy, but the psalmist says that you've been screening my calls. Right. And so there's this is part of the problem. And so I've cried myself to sleep at times. Father, I keep praying, but you're not answering. I keep asking you to do something, but I'm not getting a response. I want to suggest that there may be a reason that we're not getting a response. I want to suggest that as we look deeply into his pain, that there are some things that God oftentimes wants to teach us through our pain, and sometimes, in order for us to get those lessons, he's got to back up a little bit. He's got to screen our calls. He's got to give us not an immediate response so that we can wrestle with this pain, because pain, especially in the hands of a sovereign God, is a great teacher. Right. Yes, it is. And so by looking at some of the things that the psalmist prays for, we then find out what he desires. And this is important because these are specific things that he desires in order to relieve his depression. And so then it shows us then that here are some things that can help us manage our depression. If he had these things, he wouldn't be as depressed. And this is why he's praying for them. Thus it may be that God has Psalm 88 in Scripture to show us some practical things to learn from the pain of depression. Because, can I say it this way, depression hurts. It hurts. And And that pain and that agony of it, though, if for the godly people, for those who walk by faith, for those who put their trust in a sovereign God, the pain of depression oftentimes brings, especially being in the hand of a sovereign God, some powerful lessons. And so I want to dive in. To begin, though, we must inform you that Psalm 88 is a lament psalm. That shouldn't be hard for you to pick up on. It's a psalm where the psalmist is making a complaint about something, is mourning or lamenting some tragedy or difficulty in their life. Psalm 88 is a lament psalm. Everybody say lament psalm. About 40% of the psalms in the book of Psalms are undisputedly lament. About 40% is undisputedly lament. And if you count Psalms that have at least incorporated the genre into their Psalms, some will say it even goes about 70%. That's a lot. But here's the thing, Psalm 88 is different from any other lament psalm or mourning psalms in that lament psalms typically have the 3 T's of a lament genre. Y'all ready for the 3 T's? Yes. Lament psalms typically have the first T, you tell God. Tell God, i.e. what's bothering you. Number 2, you trust God to fix what's bothering you. Number 3, you thank God or give a vow of praise that you're going to thank God in the sanctuary in the temple. So you tell God, you trust God, and you thank God. Those are the 3 T's of lament. Tell God. Usually you're telling God about an enemy. Right? Fret not evildoers. Right? You're telling about a disease or a destruction. Trust God. That usually comes almost explicitly. Just give you a couple of examples. Psalm 13, 2 and 5. Psalm 13 is a lament psalm. Verse 2, he says, how long, O Lord? He's telling him, how long, O Lord, will you utterly forget me? How long will you hide your face from me? He's giving his complaint. But then verse 5 says explicitly, but I have trusted in thy loving kindness. My heart shall rejoice in thy salvation. That's what you expect in a lament psalm. You can get, I'm going to tell you about my problem. I'm going to explicitly let you know that I trust you in my problem, and that I'm going to thank you in anticipation that you're going to fix my problem. That's what you see in lament psalms. Psalm 31 and 12. I am forgotten as though I were dead. I have become like broken pottery, for I hear many whispering, terror on every side. They conspire against me and plot to take my life. Verse 14, but I trust in you, Lord. I say you are my God. That's Psalm 31 and 14. Over and over again, you get this. Tell God, trust God, thank God. Yeah. That's what lament psalms look like. But in Psalm 88, it's different. It is not like any other psalm. You don't get the trust. You don't get the explicit reference to trusting in God. You don't get the explicit reference of thanking God. It seems as if the psalmist can't get past the telling point. He starts off telling, and then it's just like the more he tells, the more he wants to tell him. And he is just telling you. That's it. And so Psalm 88 is being a very bleak. It doesn't have that same explicit hope and confidence and trust and thanksgiving that we find in others. It's all about, God, I got a bone to pick. Because he's depressed. And as I said, depression hurts. Anybody ever been depressed? I've had moments and I've had different seasons in my life where it hurts, y'all. No matter what words I say, it hurts. Yeah. Beloved, there is some powerful lessons that we can learn from pain. Particularly from being godly. One couple things I want to hue in on. That the psalmist, you have to read in between the lines when he is pouring out his soul. There's a couple things that we can learn from this. So One is this, and I want to look at, I notice a couple things that he wants. And from those desires are some lessons. So first thing that he wants to be heard. Verses 1 through 3, right, is almost explicit. I have cried out by day and by night before you. Let my prayer come before you. Stop screening my phone calls. Then watch this. Incline your ear to my cry. For my soul has had enough troubles. He wants to be heard. People who are depressed need to be heard. They need to know that their voice is valuable. People who are depressed need to have the freedom to talk to somebody. Come on, y'all. I mean, because they need to be able to know that what's bothering them is okay to talk about. They need to know that they shouldn't neglect talking to friends or family about their depression. They need to know that they're not a burden. They need to know that it's better to tell somebody than to suffer in silence. People who are depressed need to be heard. Yes. Yes. There are at least two ways depression seeks to strip your voice away. Right. There's an internal pressure that says that you should not say anything, and an external pressure that says you cannot say or it won't do any good to say anything. Right. That's how we do it. Internal pressure that says you should not say anything. Right. External pressure that says it won't do any good to say anything. Let me see if I can help us. See if I can be a little practical. Because as I think about if there's a good relevance, I think our black women can understand this. That I think all of us can, but there's an interesting parallel for our black women in the internal pressure that says you should not say anything. Right. See, here's the thing. Black women are some of the strongest women and strongest creatures on this earth. I believe that with all my heart. Do y'all believe that? Yeah. I believe that systematically there's been robbed of things of being vulnerable and the things that the black woman has had to do to help bear the burden in our neighborhoods and our families, right? As in watch as our men have been denigrated and dehumanized and had to strip away. There had to be a certain strength that our black women, that I believe that God gave our black women in order to endure the pressures of an evil American society. But here's the trap. Here's the inadvertent trap. Is that the trope of the strong black woman can rob them of the reality that it's okay to hurt. Yeah. Y'all gonna talk to me this morning? Yeah. So many of my sisters have bought into that they think that it's not okay for them not to be okay. Right. That's right. You don't always have to be strong for the family. That's right. Who told you that your tears are a sign of weakness? Right. Who told you that you're allowed to have a bad day sometimes? Right. Listen, it's part of this internal thing that we tell ourselves that I have to be strong, I have to be strong, I have to be strong. And God says, no, sometimes I need you to be weak. Right. I need you to be vulnerable. I need you to be weak. And part of this trope of that you always have to be strong, it comes with this trap that you will have to be silent. Yeah, right. Yeah. Because strong people, quote unquote, don't talk about their problems. Right. Strong people don't talk about how they're hurting in the depression. And so what we do is we suffer in silence. And there's a component in God's divine sovereignty that he's almost putting a mirror up to the psalmist. Yeah. By being silent, by retreating, he is allowing the psalmist's desires to come to the forefront. You want to be heard, don't you? Oh my goodness. There's an internal pressure that says you should not say anything. Right. It is better to speak up and say say something than to sit there and suffer in silence. That's right. That says you should not say anything, and then there's an external pressure that says you cannot say anything, or if you do say anything, it ain't going to do anything. The Black community has been systematically and racially suffocated to the despair of poverty in this country. And all of the racial baggage and all the stuff that comes with it. It ain't just about classism here in America. Classism and racism are connected. What's this? But you dare not say anything about it, though. You better not speak about the distresses of being Black in America. Right. If you do that, then they say you have a victim mentality. Right? It is a way of saying, it is a way of almost conditioning us to say, why say something? Because if I say something, it ain't gonna do any good. It's these external pressures. If you say something, you're a complainer. You lack ambition. In worst case scenarios, then you say, well, if you don't like America, you can go back to Africa. Worst case scenario. Right. My point is, as I think collectively, and we think about collectively just as an example to help us to think about, there are sometimes external pressures that say that saying anything won't do any good. In this way, our pain is often being censored. It's why we won't talk about racial reconciliation without talking about racial justice. And you can talk about that context of depression. And that often, if I think that me speaking up ain't going to do any good, then I won't say anything. It is the two ways that our voices can be, we can be robbed of our voice. Depression can rob you of your voice. The psalmist has a desire to be heard. Here's my point. My point is, in looking at that from whether it is Black women or the Black community in general, let's give you some example that you can latch on to, that depression can rob us of our voice. That's my point. And the first T of lament song has featured prominently in our communities. The first T is to be able to tell God about it, right? And oftentimes, that's what we've had to turn to. That's why certain hymns have been kept alive, because we have learned through life's trials that when you can't tell certain people, when you can't talk about it, when you are afraid, when that voice is telling you not to talk about it, we have turned to God and told Him. That's why certain hymns, I believe, have stayed alive in our communities. Hymns that say, I must tell Jesus all of my troubles. For I cannot bear these burdens alone. Jesus can help me. Jesus alone. I think there's an aspect there. That's why the song is now, let us have a little talk with Jesus. Tell Him all about our troubles. He will hear our faintest cry and answer by and by. Then we get cute with it and say, and when you feel the little prayer wheel turning, you know the fire is burning. Find a little talk with Jesus makes it right. Yeah. See, listen. And so we've understood that the aspect of lament to tell God is a major part, but the problem here is that He's told God and God is silent, and I'm arguing is that God is purposely withdrawing, not responding, to make the intensity of His desires come up to the fore. He starts to know more and more. The more God doesn't answer, the more convinced he becomes of what he wants. He wants to be heard. And depression, those who wrestle with depression want to be heard. Psalm 88, the psalmist has called on the Lord, but no answer. The psalm shows his desire to be heard. We all have that desire. How much more when we are depressed? That's right. Maybe one of the lessons we should learn from a pain of depression is the pain of not being heard. Perhaps it's a hard lesson that we would prefer not to get from God, but it's a lesson nonetheless. One thing that is noteworthy about the psalmist is that although he feels that God has been screening his cause, he refuses to be silent. Psalm 88 is the psalmist's protest about being ignored. Here it is. Lord, fine, you are ignoring my cause. I'm going to leave another voicemail and tell you about how you ignore my cause. Yeah. So listen. It is a protest song that says, I refuse to be silent. I am hurting. I will say something. Yeah. Repeat after me. In my depression, I deserve to be heard. You deserve to be heard. That's what he wants. Hear my anus cry, Lord. Second thing he wants. He not only wants to be heard, he wants a helping hand. Verse 5 and verse 9 has a very interesting contrast. Notice the contrast between with verse 5 being cut off from God's hand and verse 9 to stretching out his own hand. Watch this. He says, verse 5, forsaken among the dead, like the slain who lie in the grave, whom thou dost remember no more, and they are cut off from your hand. He says, that you treat me like one of those people. Then he says, my eye has wasted away because of affliction. Verse 9, I've called upon thee every day of the Lord, and I've spread out my hands to thee. This is a very vivid picture of needing a helping hand. The fact is that the psalmist is reaching his hands out to God only to say, but my hand has been cut off from your hand. He wants, in a very vivid way, a helping hand. It shows that the psalm needs a helping hand from God, but God's hand has been removed. This is very interesting because God right now is role playing. He's playing the role of a neglectful neighbor. In the Torah, even in the New Testament, that this is a problem when it's us, right? God, it warns us about being neglectful neighbors. But for the sake of the wisdom of what he's trying to do in the psalmist's life, he is now assuming the role of a neglectful neighbor. Listen, ain't nothing worse than needing help and people who can help you don't help you. It's one thing I need help and you can't help. You can't help. Right. But it's not worse when I know that you can help me. You have what it takes to help me, but you won't help. And God is purposely assuming the role of a neglectful neighbor. Why would God do such a thing? Right. He's assuming the role of a neglectful neighbor. Right. It's a point of the Good Samaritan, isn't it? Yeah. That to be a neighbor, that you have and possess what's needed to help, but you don't. He has assumed the role of the neglectful neighbor. I found out that God has to role play in our lives the role of neglectful neighbor to help us to get the lesson that we should not be neglectful neighbors, especially in a time of depression. That experience is one of life's greatest teachers. See, most of us have learned that lesson and then turned and then shown compassion in light of that lesson. What are I talking about? Most of us have at least had one experience. I'm talking about the godly people. I'm talking about Christians, right? We've had one experience, at least one experience that we needed something and we didn't get all the things that we needed. And then when we got in position, we turned that into ministry. Right. Because we realized, we knew what it was like to be a single mom struggling, or we knew it was like to be, why do you think Brother Johnson goes so hard for in street ministry and prison ministry and drug ministry? Because he knows what it's like to be there. and to have needs and have those needs neglected. And so then what happens then is that his relationship turns into compassion because he's been there. Yeah. Wow. Sister Asper, we know Sister Asper, who started the Hope for Living, which is a ministry to the homeless, that was born out of her and her mom had to live in a shelter for a couple of years. And she that experience stayed with her so that she said, well, whenever I get into a position to help, that I will help. Oftentimes that's what happens with the godly, is that God puts us in positions where we are neglected and we are rejected, and then because we know the Lord, when we get in that position, we says, I don't want anybody else to go through what I've been through. Yeah. Now, let me just say this. Let me say, that doesn't mean that we can't be tempted to do the opposite. It happens, right? That temptation is always there. That because you struggled and because nobody helped you, and because, quote unquote, as you see it, that you have to get through it all by yourself, that you're going to make somebody else get through it by themselves. There's always that temptation, but the godly understands that God is causing these desires to come to the forefront so that he can use us. Because see, I found out sometimes some of the best travel companions and people who've been there. Yeah. Come on, y'all. Listen, those are some of the best traveling companions. Those who walk, yeah, they gotta walk and put a mile of our shoes. They can walk a mile of their own shoes just on that walk where I walked. Right. Those are some of the best traveling companions. The people, listen, there's a reason, as I'm finishing up my doctoral studies, there's a reason why doctoral students have to get mentors. Yeah. Because you go through that, but thing is disorienting. You go and you write all this stuff, your advisors, everything you write is crap. Everything you write, and it's a disorienting process. Because in my master's, I was doing this and I was signing. Now everything I write is crap. Right? But they've been there. They walked where I walked, and so they're able to encourage me in ways that I may not have if I didn't have somebody who's walked that journey. Some of the life's best travel companions and people who've been there. And he wants a helping hand, but he's not giving a helping hand so that he can learn the benefit of a helping hand. Oh, my goodness. If we're not careful, we don't want to slip into the temptation that says, well, I did it, you did it. First of all, that ain't true. You didn't do it by yourself. You may have did your part, but you didn't do it by yourself. Because if it had not been for the grace of God on your side, you think that just because you will something, because you desire something, that you're going to accomplish something? No. You can have all the desire in the world, and just because you want to do something, you can be limited by all type of things. It's a lie. You can do what you want to do. No, you can't. It's a lie. It's one of the biggest myths in the world. No, you don't will yourself into health. You don't will yourself. Yeah, there's a part for you to play, but understand that's a small part in the grand economy of what God does for you. Oh my goodness. You can find yourself so depressed that you can't tell up from down. See, that's the thing. Depression, that's when you understand. People are depressed. They want to be better. They want something different. But it ain't just about what they want. Right. You can find yourself in a situation where you can't put one foot in front of the other. If it had not been for the God's mercy on our side. Yeah. Oh my goodness. We see then in this passage all the language that the psalmist uses to speak of being rejected. He says, your wrath, in verse 7, speaks about your wrath. Your waves have encompassed me. Verse 14, explicitly, you reject me. Verse 14b, you hide your face from me. Right. Verse 15b, your terrors are locking me in. You're burning error. Verse 8, you have removed my apprentices far from me. You've made me the object of loathing. He said, I don't even have friends. I need helping hand. Maybe they can help me, but you've taken them out of my life. Right. You removed the lover and friend far from me. And my only friend right now is darkness. Yeah. That's a helping hand. I gotta get out your way. You gotta get out your way. He wants to be heard. He wants a helping hand. Right. But watch this. Lastly, he wants to overcome being hindered, handcuffed. Verse 8 and verse 17, he says, verse 8, you have removed my acquaintances far from me. You've made me an object of loathing to them. Watch this. I am shut up, or we would describe it as shut in and cannot go out. He says, you're taking my move. I'm handcuffed. I'm hindered here. Right. Verse 17, he says, your terrors. He says, they, what are the they? The they goes back to verse 16. Your terrors have destroyed me. The things he's referring to, the word is fear, but he calls them, it's yours. You put them on me. He says, verse 17, they surrounded me like water all day long. They've encompassed me altogether. I don't have anywhere to go. He wants to overcome being hindered and handcuffed. And the things that is hindering, that he feels most trapped about, is his fears. That he believes that he accredits to God. Probably because God has not removed the things, so he holds God liable for it. A person with depression often experiences a lot of anxiety. Anxiety and depression can be two different things, but they're oftentimes connected. Many people with anxiety disorders fully comprehend that their thoughts are irrational, but they still can't stop them. It controls them. The fears of feeling inadequate, fears of feeling like it's their fault all the time. They lose inner control and it haunts them. They become prisoners of fear. And he wants to overcome that. And that's why he's asking God, Lord, take these handcuffs off. Because that's what depression does. It chains you to the bed. And you can't even get up off the bed. There's nothing physically on your hands. There's no shackles on your feet. But mentally, you are chained to that bedroom. It handcuffs. That's what depression can do. Loneliness and things of that matter, it can, in extreme forms, it can affect relationships. You're handcuffed to the past relationships, and you can't even move on to the new relationship. It hinders us. Gotta leave you. All these things are just desires that we see from the psalmist's pain. When we look, we see he's expressing his pain, and behind those expressions are desires. What does he want? He wants to be heard. He wants a helping hand. He wants to overcome being hindered. Look at the psalm, and that's how it ends. There's no thanksgiving, there's no I trust you. It's just putting it all on the altar. Laying it raw, right there, just raw and uncut. Here's my pain. Goodness, that's how God wants it. That's how he wants it. Here's the type of God that can handle it. He wants us to place it all before him. Just throw and bow our hearts before the Lord. He wants it there just to lay it all out. I hear him saying, cast all your cares upon me, for I care. I hear him saying, come all ye who are heavy burdened and laden, and I will give you rest. Yeah. I want us to take encouragement in this Psalm 88. It ends with just the pain of depression. And part of our argument is that that the Lord in his sovereignty is not answering the psalmist to bring his desires to the forefront so that he is fully aware of what he wants and then could use that to help the community in which he writes the psalm. I want to say this then, we can then draw great encouragement from the fact that Jesus is our high priest.
Yeah.
Because if sometimes the best travel companions are those who've walked where we've walked and been through what we've been through, then thanks be to God that even in my pain, I don't have to travel alone.
Hallelujah.
Thanks be to God that that is the very foundation on which the incarnation of Christ is built on. For his high priesthood starts with the incarnation.
Yeah.
Jesus is able to intercede for us, mediate for us. Why? The Bible says because he became like his brethren, and he can sympathize with our weaknesses. That he being made less like us. Watch this. He know what it feels like to be depressed.
Thank you, Lord.
That's the Garden of Gethsemane, isn't it?
Yeah.
He knows what it feels like to be crushed. He knows because he was bruised for our transgressions. He was pierced for our iniquities. Our chastisement was upon him. He knows what it's like to be abandoned by friends and loved ones. He knows what it's like to want the Father to call on the Father, and the Father has to give him the silent treatment. That's why he prayed on Calvary, Father, Eloi, my God, why have you forsaken me? What a privilege that we have a travel companion in Jesus.
Thank you, Lord.
Let me tell you how that's beautiful, because he's not just our travel companion, he's our high priest.
Yes, sir.
So if there's anybody who can understand when we would need mercy and why we would need mercy, it be he who walked among us and we beheld his glory. It be the one who was beaten and bruised on our behalf, the one who became man and took on the likeness of flesh and walked and lived as we walk. He knows my every weakness. He knows my trouble. That's why I have a little talk with Jesus. Because I'm talking to somebody who knows what I'm going through. That's why I tell him all about my troubles. That's why I'm confident that he will hear my faintest cry and answer by and by. Because I have a high priest who sympathizes with my weaknesses, and he intercedes on behalf of me to the Father. Says, Father, have mercy on me. I know what it's like to be rejected, Father. Have mercy on them. Hear their prayers, God. I know what it's like to reach out for you. Father, they're stretching their hands to them. Hear them. If there's anybody, watch this, when he don't hear me, I know he hears him. Oh my God. This pain of depression comes with lessons. Those lessons are something we took in our heart. And when we really understand it, we can not only rise in our depression, even if it doesn't totally leave, you can rise in it, and you can help somebody else rise. Hope those lessons, take them to heart. Be of good courage, because we have a Savior who understands all about our pain. Amen.